Hello to those in the room, and welcome to those joining us virtually. Today, we will hear about the record-breaking year our South Carolina Ports Authority has led us through. But first, the State of the Port could not happen without our sponsors. Let's take a moment to recognize them. We have a long-standing relationship with two very special presenting sponsors. First, Container Maintenance Corporation and their family of businesses. They are celebrating their 50th anniversary in 2021. Second, SunTrust and BB&T, now Truist Bank. Please welcome Mark Latanzio, Market President.
Thank you, Sean. We appreciate it. And, on behalf of Truist and each of our teammates that's here today and our region president, Mike Brennan, I want to express our thanks to the Propeller Club and the South Carolina Ports. It's been a privilege serving as presenting sponsor over the years, as Vince and Container Maintenance have been as well. And it's not hard to fathom, why Truist is proud to sponsor the annual State of the Port Address. Our purpose at Truist, it's inspire and build better lives and communities. Inspire and build better lives and communities. In this day and age, it's hard to fathom being a thriving community without our South Carolina ports, our maritime industry, and especially without the great companies represented here today. The South Carolina ports are responsible for 1 in 10 jobs in South Carolina, and they have become a top 10 U.S. container port. Its success and efficiency and innovation is being recognized nationally and internationally, especially amazing in the midst of the supply chain crisis we now find ourselves in worldwide. Simply put, without the outstanding job the port is doing in fulfilling its mission, Truist would be less successful fulfilling our purpose. So we're thrilled to partner really with each of you here in advocating for a strong and growing port system and its mission of creating jobs and creating economic benefit throughout South Carolina for everyone. So we're happy to be there. About Truist, we're BB&T and SunTrust. It's a lot of names up there. Well, we're now Truist. 2 years in this journey, it's come to a close, and most of you might know that by now, but Truist is the merger of two large regional banks, SunTrust and BB&T. And though we were different financial institutions, our cultures were very similar. We believe when you build your community, you build your bank. It served us well, and now we're doing it even better together. So I would say that now we're the 6th largest bank in America, and we're headquartered in Charlotte. We've got 10 million households from Pennsylvania to tip of Florida, all through Texas. So it's a good size bank. I would say what's important to this audience I'd like to share is that we've got over $4 billion in credit to our ports and logistics clients throughout the country. And Truist clients annually move over 14 million TEUs, which is 30% of all TEUs that are moving in the U.S. So we're proud of our commitment to the ports and logistics industry. Each of these aspects of our company are necessary and they're important, but it's not what sets us apart. And what sets us apart is that we do all this in a decentralized structure where we retain local authority, leadership, and the most recent example of building on a local level was, of course, our gift of a $1 million leadership level gift to Trident Technical College to kickstart their new transportation and logistics center, which is the redevelopment of the Berkeley campus. We're very proud of that program. You're going to be seeing soon associate's degrees in logistics management, certification in diesel mechanics, and of course the CDL, the commercial driver's license. So our gift kind of kicked off the program, shall we say, and students started going through the CDL program this summer, and I'm proud to say they now have their first graduate through this 9-week program. And this person's pretty much going to be offered a job for over $65,000 a year. So really proud of the beginnings of this. I thank the State House, the House, and the Senate that are following up with a significant amount of money to make the complete conversion of the Berkeley campus a reality by putting that money in the budget. So that's just one example of where Truist is building community. We saw the need, and I know it's important to the maritime community, obviously with the aging out of a lot of truck drivers, and a way to get folks into the logistics field that have never had that opportunity, that platform before. So I want to thank you for allowing me to share an update on Truist. And in summary, what's important to the South Carolina port system is what's important to Truist. I hope everyone here enjoys the State of the Port's address, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Vince. We'd also like to recognize our premier sponsors, Lee & Associates, MAU Workforce Solutions, South Carolina Stevedore Association, Charleston Stevedore and Company. And our event sponsors are Charleston Branch Pilots, HDR, Salmon's Dredging, and Terracon. The Propeller Club of Charleston State of the Port Address is the official kickoff of South Carolina Port Week. To kick off this very important week, we are honored to be joined by Henry McMaster, the governor of our great state. Governor McMaster, who formerly served on the South Carolina Ports Authority's Board of Directors, has a unique understanding of the value of South Carolina ports brings to the state and the impact it makes on our state's economy. The governor champions SC Port's plan to achieve the deepest harbor on the East Coast and supports the port's efforts to further develop infrastructure to continue achieving unprecedented growth. Please welcome Governor McMaster.
Thank you, Sean. I'll be brief, especially since Mark Latazio gave most of my speech already. I guess the main thing, excuse me, a very good cheesecake, by the way. I think that a lot of us, as I go around the state, I notice that a lot of people seem to have forgotten what a great place this is. And from where the people I get to talk to from around the world are looking to invest hundreds of millions and billions of dollars over time, they all want to come to South Carolina. It really is, I believe, and they say, the greatest place to do business there is. And they refer to us as a handshake state, which I've read there have been great leaders in the state that have said that over time. James Self, Charles Daniel, and others. And recently the chairman of BMW said, South Carolina is a handshake state. If somebody gives you their word, they keep it. You don't have to write it down. Charles Daniel of Daniel Construction said that a handshake is better than a contract. But we forget just what a great place this is. And even the explorers way back in the 14, 15, 1600s, when they were coming here and they were going back to their sovereigns and telling them what they saw, they said that this place in South Carolina is the most beautiful, most lush, most promising part of the New World. And it still is. We often forget it. We often forget that everybody's not on an ocean. Everybody doesn't have a lot of water like we do, whether it's salt water or fresh water. Senator John McCain used to say there's so little water in Arizona that the trees chase the dogs out there. But we're on the ocean, and we have a harbor. But some other states are on the ocean and have a harbor, but they don't have a good harbor. And those that may have a good harbor don't have a port. And maybe those that have a port don't have a great port. But there's nobody that's got a great port and two inland ports. So in that, we are unique in the whole country Of course, everybody from Charleston been saying for years we were unique in the whole world. We know that. Very proud. But we are unique, and we have things that others would love to have, and we're going to have more. Now, some that have not been mentioned, the total export sales is over $30 billion, with South Carolina exporters selling products in 195 countries and territories around the world. 190. We are an international institution. We still have the record for exporting tires for motor vehicles. We are now had the #1 spot for ball and roller bearings in 2020. In fact, a lot of companies said the best year that they had was 2020. And I tell you what, they say because South Carolina never closed. The pandemic, we did not allow the pandemic to close South Carolina as some other states did, and that has really put us on the map. And that we're going to make use of that in the future. What's coming next? Oh, by the way, it's free for commercial driver's license now at your technical college. It is now free, so we're going to fill that need. The South Carolina ports opened phase 1 of the Hugh Leatherman Terminal in March. We are really cooking. We announced the expansion of the inland port Greer for sustained record activity, and soon we will, as you know, have the deepest harbor on the East Coast going to 52 feet at low tide. That's 24 hours a day. They can come 2 ships, come in and out at the same time. And the continued development of the Navy base intermodal facility is going to be another jewel in our crown. And what all this means is that people want to come to South Carolina to work. They want to come to South Carolina to live, and because of our culture, they want to have their children grow up in South Carolina. And if we can just educate them, if we can protect the environment to keep things beautiful, it makes all of us healthy. And we can provide this kind of great, good-paying jobs that all of you are so involved in. There's no stopping South Carolina. And because we did not close down as others did, we are not digging out, we are blasting off. And it's going to make an enormous difference, and everyone here is going to be a part of it, and I want to thank you for that. Now, to get to I have a proclamation, and then I'll tell you a little story, too. This is a governor's proclamation, State of South Carolina, governor's proclamation. Whereas South Carolina's harbor and navigable waterways in Charleston, Georgetown, and Jasper make our state perfectly situated to benefit from waterborne commerce that is evident in our state's rich maritime history. And whereas the maritime community is made up of many different occupations that come together to advance the economy of the Palmetto State and keep South Carolina's supply chain fluid. And whereas international trade through South Carolina's ports facilitates 222,963 jobs across the state in the maritime, transportation, distribution, and manufacturing industries, while providing an overall economic impact of $63.4 billion each year and accounting for 1 in 10 jobs statewide. Jim Newsome, as the advertisement said, people all over the state, I don't work for the port, but the port works for me. It's true. Whereas moving containerized cargo, roll-on, roll-off cargo, specialty cargo, and bulk commodities by water is efficient and vital to South Carolina's economy. And South Carolina's modern port facilities serve as the link between cargo carrying vessels and our state's transportation network of highways, railroads, and airports. And whereas South Carolina Ports Authority is undertaking major strategic projects, including opening the company's first container terminal in more than a decade, deepening Charleston Harbor to 52 feet, expanding the successful inland port Greer, and consistently growing operations at Inland Port Dillon, developing the rail-served Navy base intermodal facility and inner harbor barge operation to handle growing cargo volumes and ensure future success, and planning for the Jasper Ocean Terminal in preparation for future growth. Whereas this week, the South Carolina Lowcountry is hosting 2 significant port-related events: the annual State of the Port Address hosted by the Propeller Club and the annual South Carolina International Trade Conference. Now, therefore, I, Henry McMaster, Governor of the great state of South Carolina, do hereby proclaim October 18 through 22, 2021 as South Carolina Ports Week throughout the state and encourage all South Carolinians to recognize our maritime community for its successful endeavors in international maritime trade and the impact it makes on our great state. Signed by me, Henry McMaster, on behalf of 5.2 million proud, happy South Carolinians. Jim, I will give this to you. Thank you. And I'll take a minute with a cute story. I know some of you have heard this, but it's worth telling again just to help you remember what I said and all of that. And that is the story of the young traveling salesman is going around the country, and whenever he'd find himself away from home on Sunday, he'd try to find a church to go to. So one time he was up in Michigan or Minnesota, and it was Sunday, and he was away from home, and he found a church he went to, and then went to the little social hall afterwards. And there was a payphone on the wall, payphones, and it had a little sign on it that said, "Calls to Heaven, $10. And he thought, that is interesting. Well, he kept his travels around the Midwest, and then he went up to the Northeast. And every now and then he would see that sign. He'd go into the social hall after church on the payphone. Some of y'all old enough to remember payphones. Remember that. And there'd be the little sign, "Calls to Heaven, $10. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it wasn't. Came to South Carolina on a Sunday. He was away from home, found a little church, went to it. After it went into the little social hall, and there was a payphone. And over it, sure enough, there was a little sign. It said, "Calls to Heaven, 10 cents. And of course, he said, now this is interesting. So the preacher came by and said, "Explain to me, please, why is it in the other states it's calls to heaven $10, here's 10 cents. He says, that's easy. That's because calls to heaven from South Carolina are local calls. It's true. Don't forget it and be sure to act like it. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. Now for the 2021 State of the Port Address, given to you by Jim Newsome. Jim has had an impressive career leading several shipping lines before becoming president and CEO of the South Carolina Ports Authority in 2009. I had the pleasure of working with Jim when he was with Hapag-Lloyd. He's a dedicated and forward-thinking leader. Although I was disappointed that he left Hapag-Lloyd, I knew that the employees of the South Carolina Port Authority were in for a treat. This was soon borne out when the port was recognized as one of the best places to work in South Carolina. As a customer of the port before Jim's tenure and a customer now, I can attest to the changes. Through Jim's leadership, he led a major turnaround effort which included the doubling of cargo volumes coming through the Port of Charleston. Over the past 13 years, he has diversified the cargo coming through the port, led crucial infrastructure projects, turning South Carolina into one of the best ports in the country. Jim was also inducted into the 2020 International Maritime Hall of Fame. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to someone I am privileged to call a friend, the South Carolina Ports President and Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Jim Newsome.
tomorrow is here.
Well, good afternoon to everyone. Thanks for being here today. To be completely honest, I would have danced to that, but my wife is here. She'd have murdered me if I embarrassed our family. So I wouldn't torture you by doing that. Welcome to the State of the Port. I'm very, very grateful to the Propeller Club for hosting this event in person. It's good to be back in person. I did this in the lobby of our beautiful building last year. It wasn't quite the same. And Sean, I'm very proud of your leadership, very proud to call you a former colleague in Hapag-Lloyd and to have you all as a major customer of our port. So thanks to Governor McMaster for being here today, Congresswoman Mace, several state senators, Senator Groom, Senator Bennett, Senator Kempson, Senator Rice, maybe some others that I'm omitting, and a lot of local leadership as well. I think it's a record number of local mayors and council chairmen and things of that nature, which is very, very important to the port. We rely on the support of our state government, our federal government, and our local governments to help us be successful. Basically, want to recognize that October is National Breast Cancer Awareness Month. You all know that breast cancer is the second leading killer of women. I'm very proud of our organization for taking the initiative to paint one of our rubber-tired gantry cranes pink in recognition of that. So thanks to the team for doing that. And honestly, it's something that we need to keep our eye on the ball about in terms of treatment and things of that nature. We had the great privilege, we opened a new terminal, as you know, the Leatherman Terminal, and one key component of that was having a new seafarers ministry at that terminal. Seafarers ministry is the unsung heroes of the waterfront community. You think of a seaman from Indonesia, the Philippines, 8,000 miles away from home. They have needs just like we do. And to have this seafarers ministry here locally is a very selfless sort of proposition. And I'm very, very proud, and I know Jeff Wallace is equally proud, that we were able to name this after Father Lynn Williams. You know Father Williams, he's been given a lot of his life to the maritime community. I'm very, very, very grateful for that opportunity. That's a picture of us dedicating that day. And finally, I would like to say thanks to Truist now. And I mean, Truist has taken a great amount of time to invest in the maritime community here, to learn about the maritime community, to build relationships, to do a lot of our equipment financing. We wouldn't be where we are today infrastructure-wise without them. And Mark and Mike, certainly thank you for being here in the Truist team. So agenda-wise, want to talk a bit about the state of the U.S. global supply chain, talk about our results very briefly, very high level, talk about infrastructure. We are, in the end of the day, an infrastructure business. That's what we do in the port world. We build infrastructure to grow our cargo base. And so talk about both of those things. And then talk about what you saw in the video. And what you saw in the video is the most important thing about the port, and it's really all of you being here as well. It's the fact that the port is about people and the commitment of people and the dedication of people. And for me, we have the best maritime community in the country here, and I'm very, very proud of each and every one of you. So we'll spend some time on that. Used to be, and I would also say that we have a great board of directors. They're here today. I will not call them out by name. You see their names on this chart. 3 of those board members have been on the board over 15 years. 6 have been, I think, over 5 years. They're very, very committed to guide us, to give us advice on what we need to be doing in the future. And I give them a lot of credit for where we are today in terms of the progress that we've made. So I'm very, very grateful to them. Our chairman, Bill Stern, our vice chairman, Dave Posek, they're the 2 that hired me actually into the port. So that's a lot of fun to still have them on the board as well. And then our leadership team, again, a great leadership team, pretty typical organization for a company like ours, but I would say that this is a world-class leadership team. They're all focused. We're very much aligned on the priorities of the port and what we need to be doing going forward. And so I'm very, very proud of them. And as you'll see, we're making transition in time to the next generation of leadership in the port. So grateful to have them here today. They work very, very hard. They're all on the same page, and that is really important. State of the U.S. global supply chain. Well, I was saying at the table to Governor McMaster, for years, no one was interested in talking in universities and stuff about what's happening in container shipping and ports. We were all able to take for granted that things worked really, really well. We had multiple weekly sailings, ports worked well, trucking capacity was plentiful, things of that nature. Well, that all changed in the pandemic. And I will tell you, it's not hard to get on television today or in the newspaper today to talk about it, because everybody's wondering what in the heck is going on in the global supply chain. So this is one of those charts that everybody hates, but it tells an important story if you think about it. So comparisons to 2020 are sort of useless right now because that was a pandemic. But if you go back to 2019, what you will see is that our volume is up about 16 to 20% import-wise as a country as compared to 2019 before the pandemic. Not hard to understand. People were at home. They were working on Zoom. They had stimulus money. So they looked at their couch and said, I don't like that couch. I want a new couch. So people bought record amounts of goods and consumed relatively less services. So the important message on this chart is the orange bar. And what you'll see is from March of really this year, import-wise, we've handled 2.5 million TEUs or more pretty much in the country every month. I would say that port capacity is about 2 million TEUs. So we're shipping more through ports than there's capacity. And the problem with it is that 60% of that volume moves through 3 gateways. And that's not coincidentally the places where ships are waiting. So people ask me, when is it going to abate? When is this problem going to be solved? And I say when the volume goes down from 2.5 million TEUs back toward 2 million TEUs, you'll see some relief. And there's no forecast that I'm seeing that that's going to happen anytime soon. So we've got to do our best together to make the best of it, to use our resources as well as we can, and to take care of our customers and to cooperate together in the supply chain. Again, another picture, volume's up 16% compared to 2019, over 20% compared to 2020, and you see that we're right in the middle of that picture. So it's an incredible growth. I didn't know. I had never managed in a pandemic, and when I did the budget for our fiscal year, I thought our volume would be down 15% or so. We didn't hire as a result of that. Turns out that our volume was up. So we really are playing catch up in a number of ways. So what's really going on? Not enough supply chain capacity to support these record volumes. Starts with a shortage of 300 million square feet of distribution centers. That's not my number, that's Prologis, which is the leading REIT involved in retail distribution. They say there's a 300 million square foot shortfall. That's 300 million square foot buildings, folks. That's a lot, basically. It's a big shortfall. So if there's no capacity in your warehouse, you have to keep the cargo in a container. It's very simple. The container is a mobile warehouse, and that's what it's being used for increasingly today. Container trucking is finite. We have many truckers here today, Jimmy Janukas of ATS. We've got to work to make this industry an attractive industry for people to drive trucks. It's very, very doable. Import terminal dwell time is up from 4 to 8 days. Doesn't sound like a lot, but think about it. The average container stays more than 1 week on the terminal under load when we have weekly services. So that's an obvious contributor to a backlog. Chassis fleet is aging, and the average time on the road is up from 8 to 15 days. Again, nowhere to put the cargo, so you've got to keep the cargo in a container, and often that has to be kept on a chassis. Berth hours required in major ports exceed berth hours available. And again, 60% of the volume is through 3 gateways. That doesn't need to be the case. 70% of the people live east of the Mississippi River. Those are consumers. Not all that cargo has to go through LA and Long Beach. Certainly that cargo was being diverted over many years to the East Coast. It went back during the pandemic under the failed idea that you might be able to get the cargo quicker. But you don't get the cargo quicker if a ship's waiting 2 weeks outside. It takes 2 weeks to get it on rail, and it takes 2 weeks longer on the rail to get it across the country. Been little of any new container terminal capacity expansion. I'm talking about new terminals. I'm not talking about existing terminals. We're an exception to that. And then inland rail facilities are not often geared for grounding containers. What I also think is not talked about very much, and I believe it to be very, very true, in the pandemic, the large retailers were anointed as essential businesses. That gave them the ability to gain share. And I'm very convinced that the large retailers are more adept at foreign sourcing than the small retailers. So even at constant sort of demand, I believe the import share would grow as a result of that. Bricks and mortar distribution, different than e-commerce distribution. A lot of the growth in retail is in e-commerce, and we're seeing that in the types of buildings that are required in this market today. We'll talk about that. One of my big issues, being 40 plus years in the shipping industry, is this conflict between procurement and operations in businesses. Way too often today, I see that procurement and operations are not aligned in business. One is focused on purchase price variance. They should be focused rather on capacity. So this misalignment is creating some of the problem. And I equally think, and Peter Tershwell and I have talked about this sort of an everyone for themselves mentality in this world today. There's not enough collaboration in the supply chain. If a customer can get 5,000 chassis on their own, sort of the heck with everybody else, basically, that would have a ripple effect on everyone else. So I would say to all of you, and if you remember one thing from today, remember this. I think as an industry, we can do way better working together. We don't do well enough. We're too selfish. And part of getting out of this is to work together to consider the needs of others. So a lot going on in the supply chain today. If you look at the container ship order book, this time a year ago, there were no ships on order. The excuse was everyone was waiting for the fuel of the future. What is the fuel of the future? It's probably not LNG. Maybe it's hydrogen. Maybe it's biofuels, methanol. I don't really know. But as is typical in the shipping industry, when the business got better, the line started making money, they ordered more ships. So there's 20% of the world container fleet on order today. 5 million TEUs of capacity is on order today. And the main size of ship is not the workhorse. When the MSC Rita was the first ship, Hervé was the first 8,000 TEU ship that came to Charleston in 2010, not that long ago. We were impressed by the size and scale of that ship, and rightfully so. Today, there are no ships on order between 7,500 and 10,000 TEU. The workhorse is no more the workhorse. What we're seeing instead are 15,000 TEU ships in great numbers or bigger. And that has a lot of taxing of port capacity. So is the port capacity in this country really up to that? I can tell you unequivocally that ours is, and we will talk about that. So a lot going on in the order book size, and that has some implications for future supply, demand, and container shipping. Economic growth is still predicted to be strong. You look at IHS Markit, you look at the International Monetary Fund, you look at Goldman Sachs. This year should be between 5.5% and 6%. Next year, still over 4%. Very healthy. Best thing is one-handed economists, Joey, because they can't keep saying on the other hand, right? But typically, these forecasts should be pretty solid. And something that's driving demand, and it's a really squiggly-looking chart, the inventory to sales ratio is at an all-time low. It's approaching almost 1-to-1, and that is a trigger for the fact that retailers have to buy more. So you have a picture of retailers buying in anticipation of demand, and quite honestly, the more resistance and problems they see in the supply chain, they only have one recourse, and that's to buy even more. So they fill up the supply chain even more. So it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So the economic fundamentals would lead us to believe that we're going to continue to have some good volumes in the port industry. Looking at our volume and financial results, again, not to spend a lot of time on it because you see it in press releases every month. 2019, 1.36 million pier containers. Last year, 1.42 million. We plan to have almost 1.5 million. We're ahead of plan this year in fiscal 2022. That's excellent as compared to where we thought we would be. Vehicles, over 250,000 vehicles. Operating cash flow, well north of 100 million. We need to be north of 100 million to mount our capital plan. We are a capital-intensive business. We need that cash flow. Record balance sheet, almost $2.5 billion. And then as Truist will tell you, a lot of debt. So we borrow money to build the infrastructure we need because it's very long-term infrastructure that's going to last us for 50 years or more. So a really great picture for the port. I'm very proud of the organization, very proud of the maritime community. When I talk about this port, it's not just about the South Carolina Ports Authority. It is about all the people that are committed to this maritime industry, close to 10,000 by Dr. Von Nessen's measurement, and all working well together to produce these results. It's a collective effort. Look at our capital spending. If you look on a 15-year period from 2017 until 2031, we will spend $3 billion in capital. $3 billion in capital. That is an absolutely huge lift. That does not include the Navy Base Intermodal Facility and barge, which we are planning. We have asked the state for assistance on, and the state legislature is stepping up in a big way to help us realize that. This infrastructure is critical for success. You can't be a top 10 port if you don't invest this type of money. And we are, in many respects, ahead of the game versus other ports who still have to build infrastructure that we have already built. We'll talk a bit about that. So we are, if anything, an infrastructure business, and that is really the secret sauce of a port. So what's the essence of a major port? You know, it's often hard to explain to your neighbors. Maybe you find that it's often hard to explain to your neighbors what you do for a living. How does a port work? I live in the tides. The people are very, very interested in the port because they see the ships all the time. So if you think about it, it's a pretty simple business. We load and unload ships. We load and unload trucks. We build infrastructure, as I say, just in the nick of time, not too early, not too late. The infrastructure that we build, if it's built well and at the right time, allows us to grow our cargo base. And then when we grow our volume, because we grow our cargo base, we have to build more infrastructure. And that volume growth creates good paying jobs. We're very fortunate. We're in an industry where the jobs pay really, really well, provide a good living. They're worthwhile jobs to grow. And then increasingly, intermodal rail is an important component of that. We've got to be good at intermodal rail, and it's a place where we've had a bit of a deficit, basically. So this is all an iterative process. It's really what we do every day to be successful. We have planned our capacity extremely well. You'll see in 2021, when we open phase one of the Leatherman terminal, we have 3.5 million TEUs of capacity. By 2033, when we finalize the Leatherman terminal in 3 phases, we will have 5.3 million TEUs of capacity. So the Leatherman terminal will have the same capacity as the Wando terminal. That's impressive to think about, basically. And then one day, hopefully, if the state needs to replace the North Charleston Bridge with a taller bridge, we will have more capacity at the North Charleston terminal. It's bridge constrained today. So very, very important. I would say few ports can show this clear a picture to their customers. And this is what people are interested in. If Walmart wants to put an import distribution center in a location, they want to know that you've planned your capacity. They don't want to be shut out of capability. So this is an important picture to show. When I joined the port in 2009, I knew that we were building a new container terminal. What we didn't realize, and we didn't until we moved Barbara over to run operations in 2015, we had to do a lot of work on our existing terminal. The Wando terminal in 2015 did not have one crane that could handle a 15,000 TEU container ship. Fast forward to today, we have 20 cranes in the port that can do that today. So we had to do a lot of work at the Wando terminal. We did it just in the nick of time. I can tell you when the Costco development came in 2017, we didn't have enough cranes. We had some, we had enough, we made it work. But a lot of work's been done. We bought 15 cranes. We have 65 rubber tire gantries that we bought, 28 empty handlers. And we increased the capacity of this terminal by 700,000 TEU. So the cheapest increment of capacity is increasing capacity in existing terminals. Other ports are talking about doing that today, and that is the first thing that you do. So we got to 2.4 million TEUs of capacity, and most importantly, we can handle 14,000 TEU ships at once there. And that happens every week today. pretty much. We have those ships here today. So infrastructure just in the nick of time. Then we needed to build a new container terminal. It's the first greenfield new terminal since 2009. So again, when I say that, people say, well, wait a minute, I'm expanding my existing terminal. I understand that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about brand new port infrastructure that's ready in time. So the last terminal was built in 2009. My guess is the next terminal is in 2030 because it takes permits, it takes financing, things of that nature. So this is a world-class terminal that was built in time. We need to get this terminal fully open now. We need to get this terminal fully open now. We've got 1 out of 3 or 4 ship services there today. You all know the reason behind that. It's absolutely ridiculous to have a terminal that has more capacity at a time when lots of ships are waiting elsewhere to get into port. So we're working on that right now, and I'm sure we're going to be very, very successful in doing so. We have a great inland port network, an edgy concept back in 2012. If you think about it, we decided to build an inland port in Greer with the encouragement of Norfolk Southern and BMW. Lots of people didn't think that would be very successful. It's turned out to be extremely successful. Over 150,000 rail lifts in that inland port. It gave us the courage and commitment to build a second inland port in Dillon, which is on the North Carolina border, serves Harbor Freight tools. Between those 2 inland ports, 200,000 rail lifts, which is essentially 200,000 truck moves that are not on the road in South Carolina, basically, and a more efficient way to move cargo, a more efficient way to provide last mile access for major customers such as BMW, such as Harbor Freight Tools. So very successful. And I think the combination of all that is that we have a really good supply chain infrastructure for a small state like South Carolina, having built all these diverse pieces of infrastructure. And certainly, last and not least, harbor deepening. So we have the first deep draft navigation project under what they call smart planning. Got to be careful what you name things, because someone might ask you what was the planning before. I asked that question. It wasn't overly appreciated, in fact. But anyway, be that neither here nor there. So we've done a major harbor deepening project in 12 years' time, from start to finish. In my world, 12 years is not overly fast, but I can tell you in the world of harbor deepening, it's exceptionally fast. Other projects, and Dale Wagner knows, taken 25 years or more in other places. So we're uniquely positioned, the deepest harbor on the East Coast, and a great venture between our federal delegation, our state legislature. This would not have happened if our state legislature had not put up $300 million on a timely basis. Is sort of the rocket fuel to make this happen. The Army Corps doesn't want to do projects that are not going to be successful. So that $300 million was critical, and we're going to have something really special. What I will say, I never say always, I never say never. We will never deepen this harbor again. We'll certainly have to deepen eventually, maybe from the Leatherman terminal up to North Charleston, but a total deepening, we have achieved the deepest depth that I think we're going to need. So a bold claim, and I want to spend a second on this. I believe that we have built unequaled port infrastructure in this country at a time when it's really, really needed. So what I mean by that, if you look at the top 10 ports, I would put our infrastructure up against anyone's. I wouldn't trade our position, our competitive position, for anyone's today. And that's a great tribute to all of you, that we have the confidence and ability to do that. And it will serve us well for many, many, many years to come. So it's a bold claim. I think it's a very accurate claim. I'm very proud of that. So as always in our world, we're ambitious, we're aggressive. Things remain to be done. We have more to do. The Navy Base Intermodal Facility, you see a rendering of that here. You saw that in the video. You see the Wando barge operation. You see phase 2 and 3 of the Leatherman terminal. We have a deficit in terms of intermodal container rail in Charleston. We don't have near dock rail. We don't have on dock rail at the Wando terminal. We never will. So we have to really work around that, and we're coming up with an idea basically, and then we've asked the state legislature to support us with $550 million to build a new intermodal facility at the Navy base that will be dual served, and to help us fund a barge operation from the Wando terminal to and from that Navy base intermodal facility via the Leatherman terminal. We think we can move about 2/3 of the truck traffic on that barge operation. Is it expensive? Yes. But that's just the way it is. We have to do it. We cannot continue to compete in the local market for 350,000 containers a year of truck capacity. It just doesn't work if we're going to grow the port. So very edgy concept, but very, very doable. Our team is working on that now, and I know it's going to be successful. And then phase 2 and 3 of the Leatherman terminal will be built as they are needed, and for sure they're going to be needed. And if you ever have a chance, drive on the access road around the Leatherman terminal. You don't have to go into the terminal. When you see what's there, you'll be very, very impressed. So, for my whole career, I've been talking about chassis. And when people are talking about chassis, it's usually not good. It's usually not good. So I took a picture. I almost wrecked my car doing this. My wife's going to get mad at me. When I was the CEO of Ned Lloyd in 1995, we bought 5,000 chassis. So that's 26 years ago. That chassis was last week going into the Wando terminal. It's a 26 years old chassis without anti-lock brakes, without radial tires, without LED lights. That is not an acceptable standard for the U.S. chassis industry today. So we have got to do better here. And chassis, to some extent, are another example of selfishness within the supply chain, basically, if you think about it. So fast forward to today, beautiful picture of our new chassis pool. So our board has given us the permission to invest $160 million in what we call the Smart Chassis Pool. What's in a name? That's a good name because this is really smart. So it's a futuristic chassis pool. We're buying 7,500 chassis. We're going to lease 5,500 relatively new chassis, different model, net lease model, confined within South Carolina, competitively priced, and a really dramatic improvement over today. If you look at this chassis, the cost of maintenance is fractional versus the cost of a 26-year-old chassis. So again, a bold step in the right direction. We're not the authors of this idea. We copied the idea from Hampton Roads, from the Port of Norfolk. They were the ones that went out in this way and really showed us the way to do this. And I'm very proud of what we're doing. And others are now following this model. So in the Southeast, we're going to reform the chassis model in a very, very productive way. I talked about the Navy base intermodal, the Wando barge. Thanks to the South Carolina legislature for giving us $200 million up to now. We're hopeful to secure another $350 million that will finalize the funding of that project. Vital for our future because we've got to grow intermodal container rail. We do 25% of our volume via intermodal container rail with a very imperfect solution today. So if we have the right solution, I think that we can improve that somewhat. So build infrastructure in the right time, in the right amount. So it gives us a chance now to grow our cargo base. So we were a manufacturing port. You've heard me say that. I saw Sarah Hazard is here, head of the South Carolina manufacturers. We had the ability to double our volume in the last decade based on the growth of advanced manufacturing jobs. It's almost a one-for-one relationship in South Carolina. It's pretty unusual, actually. But what we realized was that manufacturing was 11% of the GDP and that retail goods consumption was about 35% of the GDP. We didn't know it was going to grow that much in the pandemic, which it did, but still very significant. So we needed to change our focus. And we were frankly behind in retail distribution. We're not as caught up as Savannah and Norfolk were in that. So we had to tack to a new premise, basically, and now's the time to do it. And I would say if you look at what's happened today with all the disruptions in the pandemic, it gives us a leg up in terms of trying to tack into this new area. Because one thing is for sure, ships go where there's cargo. You can build all the infrastructure you want. If you don't have a cargo base, the ships are not coming there. So we've got to grow our cargo base to be successful, and this is the right way to do that. So what is retail distribution today? It's really two things. It's on the one hand, efficient transloads to support e-commerce. Transloading is about e-commerce, 100,000 square foot buildings, 800 to 1,000 trailer parking spaces. Not many spec builders build those, by the way. And then on the other end, large distribution centers, 1 million square feet or above, which handle the goods of the big retailers. So what is the requirement of success? What does success look like? How do you make these things happen? One, you have to have plentiful land. These things are not done on 50 acres. They're not done in the middle next to neighborhoods and stuff. It's a very complicated prospect. You have to have a willing workforce. Workforce has been a big issue in supply chain. A lot of the transloads are run by temporary labor, big issue. We need support of local governments, county and cities. We have to work with counties and cities to make this happen. Counties need to want this type of industrial development in their county. And then finally, ample domestic trucking. We talk a lot about container trucking, but it's equally important to have 53-foot domestic trucking. So that's the keys to success in this area, and I think we're very well positioned to realize those. When we decided to start down the retail distribution road in 2016, 2017, we said, look, if we're going to start, let's start at the top. I had a pre-existing business relationship with Walmart. They are the most sophisticated in terms of supply chain. So we made a real move to them. They were looking to build a new import distribution center, and we worked very hard on that. It took us 4 years to realize that. But the outcome of that is we got IDC 7 for Walmart in Charleston, or in Ridgeville, and Dorchester County. Very, very grateful to the city of Ridgeville. I know the mayor's here today, and certainly the economic leadership in Dorchester County for making this happen. $220 million investment, 1,000 jobs, 1,000 people who can stay home and work in Dorchester County or come maybe from Orangeburg and other places. 3 million square feet. What's a 3 million square foot building look like? It's 7,500 feet around. It's 1.5 miles to walk around that building, basically. And 70,000 containers potential, and I'm very, very sure that everything Walmart does is understated, so I'm sure that volume is going to be more. So it is an absolute game changer for the South Carolina Ports Authority. And I see Jeff Holzbauer here, he's the manager. Jeff, stand up, so everybody. Jeff's the manager of IDC 7. And I'm very, very grateful for their confidence in being here. Very good. So, no, we're looking forward to that. We also had a building on the Wando terminal, which you would have known as a container freight station. That was an old term back in the nascent days of container shipping. We converted that into a transload building. And we were fortunate to have a local partner, Tradeport. I don't see George and John. I think they're here somewhere, but I can't see them from here. But we got a great local partner that has expertise in retail transloading. This building will do close to 1,000 containers a week in the peak season for Walmart and Amazon. So again, part of the overflow of having Walmart IDC 7 was the recognition that transloading could work for them. And then Amazon's growth is just unprecedented. So having both of them in one building puts us in a really good situation for the future. So we don't have enough capacity, and certainly both capacity and trailer parking. Again, for every dock door, you need 8 to 10 trailer parking spaces. So we have a new property. Our board approved the sale of this property today. Out off of Clements Ferry. Again, Tradeport is going to be the operator of that facility, and we're very proud about attracting more transload business here. This is the future. What is growing is e-commerce, and this is the future to be able to efficiently handle e-commerce business. So great development there. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the importance of container trucking, and I mentioned it at the start, and it is something that is paramount in my mind. I've said, if you've heard me speak, and many of you hear me speak quite often, I've said that container trucking could be the Achilles heel of growth in the U.S. container shipping industry if we didn't do something to address it. Not the truckers' fault at all. It's essential to the growth of the U.S. supply chain. And it will only, this is really simple, folks. This is a very solvable problem. if we put our minds to it, like most problems. It's only going to happen if truckers can make a reliable and good living. If a trucker gets tied up in a container terminal for 4 hours, they cannot make a good living. That's not going to work. So we've got to do better. What are the essential components of it? Good turn times in facilities. Predictable and reliable operating patterns in facilities. You can't have a grounded operation one day and a wheeled operation the next day, and it's open from 10 to 6 one day and 5 to 1 the next day. It's got to be predictable. Fair rates. Remember what I said about procurement and operations. We've driven trucking rates too low. I'll just say it right now. We've driven trucking rates too low. Very important, respect for the profession. You all want to work in a field that you're respected. Truck drivers do as well. And too often they're treated with disrespect, and we've got to fix that. And we've got to also look at the type of operating models. We've got owner-operator models, we've got company truck models. Maybe that balance is a bit out of whack, and we have to look at that as well. So we can train and recruit the next generation of container truck drivers. I'm absolutely committed that we can do that. We're leaning heavily on Trident Tech here locally. I've gotten some support from the state legislature for that. It doesn't just have to be Trident Tech. It can be other technical colleges in South Carolina. It should be. Got to get the U.S. military attuned to outplacing their people who have driven trucks in Afghanistan, documenting that service so they can basically get insured if they drive a truck here. Internship programs, again, maybe they drive on a container terminal for a while and then they go out over the road. And then challenging our insurance industry to cooperate. There's no reason a driver under 25 years old can't drive a truck in the local drayage market. But there's just some Byzantine ideas behind that we've got to fix. So if this doesn't get fixed, we're going to have an enduring problem. And we got to put our minds to doing it. It's absolutely solvable, like most things are. All of our economic development is not just in Charleston. And we are very privileged to be involved in the recruitment of E&J Gallo's packaging and distribution facility in Chester County. Over $450 million investment, one of the great brands in the world. Look them up online. They have brand names that you are drinking that you probably didn't know were attached to them. Very much here in South Carolina because of our port. And I'm very, very proud of that. I look forward to them being here and growing with them over time. What we learned is if we grow importing, we got to do what? We got to grow exporting. An example of that is the plastics industry. We have developed with some good private sector partners. I saw George Cook of Frontier here a bit earlier. We have 5 major world-class transload facilities in Charleston today that have about 70,000 TEUs of capacity. So remember I said the Walmart building had 70,000 of import capacity. This capability has 70,000 of export capacity. Also working on ag transloads, both up in Dillon and in Charleston. So the future is bright. We've got to grow exports. We have got to grow exports. It's critical balance-wise for the shipping lines. And then the last thing, refrigerated cargo. We have the number 1 and 2 refrigerated players, both Americold through the acquisition of Agro and Lineage, both autonomously and through the acquisition of NOCS. Both here about 500,000 square feet of capacity. When I started, we had 50,000. So we've grown that tenfold. It's a vital, American protein is a rising standard of living product in the world. So we are really right in the dead center of that, and it's an important area of growth for us. So welcome back to the Carnival Sunshine. It's been gone for a little while from here due to the pandemic, but we're happy she's starting back in January. Carnival is a great customer of the port, very collaborative. We look forward to having that ship back here. We own one of the more valuable pieces of real estate on the East Coast of the United States at Union Pier that is less and less involved in maritime activities for obvious reasons. We entered an agreement with Lowe under the direction of our board to do a development, entitlement, and disposition of that property basically for us. So it's about a 3-year project. We're partners with the city of Charleston on this. I hate the term, most of you know me, I hate the term win-win because that usually means someone's going to lose. in my career experience. But this is a true win-win. This is good for the port. It's good for the city, good for Charleston County in terms of getting valuable property on the tax rolls, basically, where it can pay for itself and reunite the city of Charleston with its eastern waterfront, which is barely accessible today. I mentioned there are many local municipalities and counties here today. I'm very, very grateful for that. I think it's a record amount of attendance from them. It's really important for us to provide value to the local communities. We, as a great port, have to coexist with wonderful local communities. We have a dedicated resource for that. Jordy Yarborough is handling that for us today. So we have a lot of activities afoot. I'd like to just cover a few of them. Obviously, funding the North Charleston overpass relative to the 2000 MOU with Mayor Summey and Ray Anderson, the Rivers and Durant overpass. We're going to put some money into that to finalize that completion, or to make the completion of that MOU. Working with the city of Charleston on an acceptable flood wall solution, one that works for the city and one that doesn't interfere with our business at Union Pier and Columbus Street. Very achievable. Working with Mayor Haney on the Mount Pleasant Port District, basically to really have land from shipping lane down to the entrance that's dedicated to the port. Working again with Dorchester County on retail distribution, and certainly again the Mayor of Ridgeville was active in that. Identifying opportunities for port-dependent distribution in Dillon and Greer. And other opportunities for those who want growth. We're a state port. There are 46 counties in this state. People have land available. They have a desire to be in the supply chain industry. We're all ears, and there's plenty of demand for it. So last but certainly not least, people make the difference in our port. And I will tell you, I'm more proud of I could not be more proud of the entire maritime community that we have. They're great people, very professional, very skilled, the best in the world as far as I'm concerned. We had a job fair. We didn't hire during the pandemic. We were really behind the 8 ball. Our employees let us know about it. They were overworked, significantly overworked, and we were not the 2021 best place to work anymore after that, I can tell you. They let us hear it, as they rightfully should have. We had a job fair. 500 people showed up for 150 jobs. So the idea that people don't want to work in this industry couldn't be further from the truth. So that was a good step. Our staff today in the port is 850 people, budgeted to get to 900 people. So that's a big development, basically. And then if you look at the model, we work on a hybrid operating model here. I call it the best of all worlds. We have I see my friend Alan Robb here from the ILA and Lenny Bailey, and I've known Alan longer than I haven't known Alan, which says something maybe, Alan, about how old we are. But anyway, if you look on a given day when we would have 3 ships in our port, and that's not unusual today. It's not unusual that we have 3 ships in our port. So on that given day, 12 gangs of work, we have 465 port employees. The ILA has 610 employees, total of almost 1,100 people working every day, making good wages, doing productive work, in a very diverse way on our waterfront. So it's a great success story together. And what I will equally show you, this is when we don't have gates working, which is over half the time, about 357 ILA, about 57 port employees, total of about 400 people. So a lot of work on the waterfront. And a picture I'm most proud of, if you look at ILA man hours, and I consider that as much my responsibility as I do our workforce for the South Carolina Ports Authority, from a low point of 2009, 2010 of 1.2 million man hours, we're up to 2.25 million man hours today. That's the equivalent of adding 500 full-time jobs on a 40-hour week. That's nothing short of awesome, and something we're very proud of. Great partners with 3 crafts of the ILA, and really proud of the product that we're able to create as a result. So in summary, we're handling record volumes. That's a pleasant surprise. We didn't expect that. We'll take it. We've built the best port infrastructure in the U.S. in preparation for that. Retail distribution provides a fertile ground for cargo base expansion. We're getting into the retail game in a big way. It provides a statewide opportunity for growth. This is a state port system. It's not a local system. We can grow in multiple locations. We've got to finalize some important initiatives, the Charleston container rail operations, the Smart Pool, the Leatherman terminal operating at full capacity. That's a must. We got to prioritize container truckers as a strategic asset. We've got to get our minds around that. And then we've got to grow and leverage a great local port workforce. We need to double the size of this workforce here. Anybody that wants to work in this industry needs to be able to do that, basically. It's wonderful work, something I've done all my life. So, one final thing that I will talk about. I joined the port in 2009. In 2012, I worked with our board to extend my employment contract, initially for 7 years, ultimately for 10 years, through December of 2021. So someone asked me the other day, well, December of 2021 is coming around the corner. What are you doing? And I said, well, that's a good question. Early in 2020, I started working with Bill and Dave and Pam Lackey about the idea of extending my current contract through June of 2022 and finding a way as a result of that to move on to the next chapter of my personal and professional life. I have worked since September 16, 1977, when I got my MBA at Tennessee, for every day of my life for 45 years, without a break. Worked for great companies, worked with great people, very, very proud of that. But I think it's time for Kathy and I to define the next phase in our personal and professional future. I will retire from the port, for sure, but that doesn't mean I'm going to sit and look at the four walls. Anybody that knows me knows better than that. So it's an exciting time for us. I'm very grateful to the board for extending that contract. So, Dave Posick said it earlier today in our board meeting, the ultimate picture of success in an organization or in a business is when the replacement for the outgoing CEO can be found from within the organization. I think you'd agree with that. When I joined the port, I would say an outsider was needed. Today, I would say that an insider was needed. And the good news is that the port didn't have to look very far outside the confines of the walls of 200 Ports Authority Drive in Mount Pleasant to find my successor. So today at the board meeting, our board appointed Barbara Melvin as the sixth CEO of the South Carolina Ports Authority effective July 1 of 2022. Thank you. So Dave Posick also said, Dave's the chairman of our HR committee. He says probably the longest job interview in the history of the world. So it's in essence a 10-year job interview, because essentially when I joined the port, Barbara was doing government relations, the stuff that I didn't know anything about. Then we asked her to run our deepening project. You see the outcome of that. And then in 2015 did the very contrarian but important thing of having her run all of our operations, so really 90% of our workforce. And then she got her executive MBA in supply chain at a great university that will go otherwise unnamed here, but you know who I'm talking about. And so that's all been a wonderful success. There is no better qualified person in this industry to run the South Carolina Ports Authority than Barbara Melvin. I can tell you that for a natural fact. We share a common vision. We've developed that together over time. I will be an executive advisor for a year after my retirement in June, so I'll be around to assist in whatever way she or the board needs me to be around. But I would say for our organization, this is the ultimate statement of success. That our board can name an internal successor for the port to keep on going in the tremendous path that we're going today. So it's really a wonderful thing that we're doing today, that I'm grateful to our boards for their leadership. They've spent hours. I mean, people often wonder what we do. But they've spent hours on transition planning, hours on helping us work together to develop a management team. We've got a great management team in place that's going to take this port forward for years to come. So, Barbara, congratulations, and that's the end. So I appreciate you being here today. It's my 13th State of the Port, my last State of the Port. You have a new face up here next year. I want to thank those that organized this today. There's a tremendous amount of work that goes into this. And certainly, Ashley Eisenman, my right hand, Cammie McCoy, Jean Jamay, the Propeller Club staff, you have no idea what it takes to pull this off in such a professional way as they do. So I'm very, very grateful to them. And as I said to you, every time I said it to you in November of 2009, I wasn't sure what I was talking about. I said, I am very sure, but I'm very sure now, our best years are still ahead of us here in this port. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jim. And congratulations, Barbara. Thank you for a very informative State of the Port. Before we go, I would like to take a moment to again thank our sponsors for their support and to congratulate the 4 scholarship winners. Thank all of you for attending in person and those watching virtually for your continued dedication to South Carolina's growth and prosperity through the maritime industry. I now call the 2021 State of the Port closed.